How cool is this? Totally useless, but let's make one anyway. Well, it's not a steam engine or anything. But I remember seeing one of these as a kid, and it goes by many different names, I guess. So, just had to build one. So let's grab some scraps. Here's a little piece of 1/2-inch plywood or so, a little dowel, and a little 1x. I think I've shaved it down slightly from 3/4. First thing though, let's take our plywood and just true up the two sides. I always do this just so I know I've got a true, straight, and 90-degree surface. Next, let's cut a square off the end, and we'll set it aside for later. Next, let's tip our saw blade on the table saw over at an angle. The exact degree is not that important. And we're going to put a small bevel on both sides of our little 1x. First one side and then the other. But we're not going to do this again. See how I beveled both sides of the small piece? That's unnecessary, and it actually works against us, which you'll see in a bit. So while we have the blade still set at that same angle, let's put an angle cut on our plywood. We're going to bevel each side. Yep, just like that. So now let's cut that piece in half. And we're going to put a bevel on one end of each of those pieces. So now you can see I have two pieces of plywood with a bevel on three sides. Now let's cut each of these pieces in half there at my mark. We are done with the bevel on the table saw, so let's straighten the blade back up to 90 degrees. Okay, here are our 4 pieces, and now let's trim that little 1x for making the sliders. But here you're going to see at the end of the cut why it was a bad idea for me to bevel both sides of this small piece. There's no straight wood left by the end of the cut, so you can see it zapped on the blade there. But half of it is good, and that's all we need. There's our slider. Now let's take these 4 pieces back over to the table saw and just trim the excess off. And here you can see all of them. They're still a little bit too big, but that's okay for now. Now I'm going to use the slider piece to approximate how they are going to fit on that little square of plywood. And just to build in some spacing tolerance, let's add 1 piece of blue painter's tape. Time to add some glue. Just a little tight bond. And again, our slider piece is going to come in very handy for positioning all of our little 4 squares. And I marked the center of the square piece of plywood, the base, on all 4 sides to help me line everything up. So let's get everything lined up and glued in place. And I've got some leftover Chinese in the fridge that's calling my name right now. So I'll position this last little corner piece here. And this needs to dry and set up a little bit. So cashew chicken, here I come. See you in a bit. Now that's dry enough, so let's trim up the four sides, make it look pretty. Nice and straight. And then let's just put a little chamfer on the four edges near the top. There we go. Now we're ready to work on the mechanism. So let's get rid of the sawdust. We want it to slide freely. So just get everything cleaned up. Okay, let's cut two little pieces for the sliders. And then I've got a little piece of scrap wood, almost like a wooden stirring stick size, that I'm going to use to help make the hand crank. So let's drill some small holes, and I'm going to use some tiny brads instead of screws on this. And a trick that my dad taught me years ago, clip the tips off little brads when you're driving them in. Otherwise they act like a wedge and tend to split the wood. The other thing you can do with these small little brads is clip the head off and make a tiny little drill bit that's just the right size. So we'll get this temporarily mounted, and we want to adjust the position and length of the two little sliders so that they don't touch when they cross each other in the middle. And let's add a little piece of dowel for a handle. And since this is just a proof of concept prototype, not going to worry about staining or finishing. Well, I certainly had a lot of fun. So I hope you get inspired. Make one for yourself. Maybe change it up just a little bit. And it's not completely useless. I mean, if you're on the phone for 20 minutes holding for IT support, it just might calm you down a bit. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.